LinkedIn can feel overwhelming sometimes, like a jungle full of content, which can go from cringy to actually interesting and relevant. One of the people that's actually stood out to me in the last few months is Sam Owens. He has a great resume, great track record in marketing with companies like WhiteWave and Danone, and he's currently a CMO. But he's actually someone who actually regularly posts content, especially videos, that actually aim to help people in their careers. I reached out to him actually and discovered he's also authored a book, The 8 Career Skills You Didn't Learn in College. I think it's self-explanatory why I decided to get him on the show. I was not only interested in knowing more about his tips, but also wanted to understand his journey, how he went from having a regular career to actually sharing content and actually writing a book. This is Lead and Thrive, the podcast for leaders in consumer goods and retail. And I'm Daniel Torres Dwyer, founder of Dwyer Partners. Hello, Sam. Thanks for joining us today. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. You told me before we went live, you told me that Colorado covered in snow.
Yes. This morning I was shoveling my driveway. We got about 6 inches on the ground now. So it's not as bad as Texas because at least we have power. In Texas, they have no power and no water right now.
I know. As we speak, it's happening. Probably when this is published, hopefully it won't be happening anymore. But I've heard it's pretty bad, isn't it?
Yeah, it's bad.
Wow. So Sam, as a matter of introduction, could you tell the listeners a bit about yourself?
Of course. Yeah. So I am the CMO right now of a company called Cauliflower Foods. Mm-hmm. And they make cauliflower-based pizzas and pizza crusts and entrees. And specifically, we cater to a low carbohydrate diet, keto diet. You know, our crusts have 2 net carbs as an example. And that's through the magic of the cauliflower ingredient that's able to do that. So I've been doing that. I've actually been doing that about 3 months. Before that, I was with Danone. You'd probably recognize Danone, yep. Daniel. I worked on actually the Silk almond milk brand because Danone acquired a company called WhiteWave Foods in 2016, and I was working there at the time. And it's a natural and organic food company based here in Denver. It's where I live in Denver. Before that, I worked at another CPG company, big American company, ConAgra Foods, and worked on frozen meals. So I've been doing this for about 11 years, the consumer goods marketing piece with different type of roles and responsibilities. And then I also have a career coaching business that I run. It's called Sam's Career Talk. It started, well, we can talk more about this, but the impetus of it really was coming out of business school and recognizing why certain people were more successful than others in their careers. And then I started, running training for marketing folks at the different organizations that I worked at, and then branched out into career coaching. I wrote a book called The 8 Career Skills You Didn't Learn in College. Mm-hmm. And from there, have been helping people get jobs, helping people deal with crappy bosses, helping people become better leaders. So that's kind of the passion business that I have that, I think I'll do it till the day I die because I really enjoy it and it's really impactful for people.
Yeah. And I think the main benefit that this sidekick business that you're doing, which is in line with your passion, the biggest benefit that it's brought you is that I actually became aware of you through that.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember I saw one video of yours on LinkedIn, and then I started following you and I started seeing you do all this content, and I was like, whoa, I have to connect with this guy. 1, because he's in CPG, and 2, because he speaks out very interesting stuff.
Well, thank you.
What made you actually not only do this as a side thing, but actually go so public on LinkedIn about it?
Yeah, it's funny. I wrote the book first, which I wouldn't recommend for people. I'd recommend, I think I did it backwards. A lot of times you want to get success in an audience and then write a book, right? Well, I wrote the book first and I pitched it to publishers and agents. And the agent, one agent, it was like insightful. She basically said, look, it's a great book, but where's your audience? Publishers want an audience. They don't care even if it's a crappy book, as long as it's an audience, so finally I was like, fine, I'm going to do this myself, And so I went and I actually self-published the book on Amazon.
Wow.
But then it also kind of the spite of it all made me say, that's it. Then I'm going to start putting this information out there. So it's been, I don't know, 2-3 years that I've been making videos on LinkedIn and building an audience and stuff like that. So the impetus behind it really was I wanted to get this out there. And there's so many people out there who have books, who have good things to say, but they don't want to put in the hard everyday work of building an audience. It's not easy to do. It's just because it requires dedication, discipline, focus. And so that is really what started me down that path, and doing that was a recognition that I needed to, if I was ever going to have an impact, if people were going to ever see my content.
Yeah. And how often do you actually post videos on LinkedIn? I think you only do LinkedIn as well, right?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I'm on Facebook and Instagram and stuff. I got my Sam's Career Talk handles, but I really focused much more on LinkedIn. That I had a head start, because I was already pretty active on the platform. And LinkedIn right now is a platform that's not saturated like YouTube or Facebook, where you can get views and you can still build an audience pretty well. So I doubled down on LinkedIn. And your question was, how much do I post? I probably do 2 videos a week plus another 2 or 3 text posts. So I post almost every day to LinkedIn.
Okay. And what type of engagement are you getting? I think we normally measure it in terms of likes, comments, and views.
Yeah, it's interesting. My video, so on LinkedIn, video gets more engagement but less views.
Yeah.
And text gets more views, less engagement. So on a text post, I've had everything from 2,000 views and 10 likes upwards to 50,000 views and 700 likes. On the video side, I'd say I've maxed out at about 50,000 views and, 500 likes or something. But I say I average probably on video about 10,000 people watching, and probably in the 1 to 200 likes and kind of, comment range. I think one metric that LinkedIn allows you to see, which is really interesting, is time watching, which is a really interesting measure of engagement, because a lot of people don't want to engage, but if they watch it, it's good. So I've been pretty pleased with my watching metrics. I think people on average are watching at least half of my videos.
Wow.
Which means, of course, probably maybe 25% are watching all of them, or, it depends on how that's broken up. But usually, from my experience in marketing, you see a lot of people drop off, large percentage drop off after the first 5-10 seconds. So that's a metric I've been happy with, is I feel like whether they're commenting or not, people are watching my stuff, which is good.
Yeah. Did these numbers come up like the moment that you started, or was it after?
No, I built it up over time for sure. And that's another reason why people drop off, is they start and they get 2 likes and they get 10 views and they think, forget this is a joke. I'm not doing this. So it does take a certain amount of believing in yourself, believing in your content. I think some of the posts, I believe in this, but I don't think anyone else will engage. Sometimes those things do the best, and other times you think, oh, this is spot on with my audience, they're going to love it. It doesn't do anything. So, you really have to, my framework is this, should you post something on LinkedIn? You have to ask yourself 2 questions. One is, do I like it and believe in what I'm posting? And will my audience like it? If it's number 1, then you should post, and not number 2, you should post. If it's number 1 and number 2, you should post. If it's only number 2, but not number 1, don't post. If you're just pandering to an audience and you kind of lose your way pretty quickly there.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. So when did you actually write your book?
So I published it in November 2019.
Okay.
And it took me about 5 years.
Oh my God.
Off and on to write with with my day job and stuff like that. If I did another book, I'd try to crank it out in 6 to 12 months. But this one was just kind of off and on, and it was my first book. And so I published it in 2019.
So what actually led you to, apart from your day job, which was working at Danone, which I'm sure means quite a lot of hours a day, what actually led you to actually taking the extra time to write a book?
Yeah, there's a couple things. I think it can be a book. I think there could be a lot of things, but I think many of us career professionals working for other organizations have a desire to have something that is uniquely ours. And, everything I do during the day is not mine, right? It's my company's, which is not a bad thing because I'm compensated very well for that. So I have no problem with that. The fact that the work I do is not mine because I get a paycheck for it. But I wanted to do something that was uniquely mine and ownable. So, some people have hobbies, some people watch football. I wanted to do this book because I felt so strongly about this topic that I wanted to get it out there. And its background on the book, basically, the way kind of I opened the book and the way this started is my last class in one of my last classes in business school was an investment class, but it was really like a how to be successful class. Wasn't an academic professor. My professor was a ex-Goldman Sachs partner. And it was during the downturn of 2009, right? So the stock market was down, 40%. People were freaking out. So everyone was wondering, oh, am I going to why did I come back to business school? Am I going to survive? And so my professor gets up there to have a conversation with everyone. And so everyone's really attentive because he's like, here's what you got to do. And what he said is, I wish we could teach a class here on schmoozing, is what he said. And he was like, because the stuff you learn in school is fine, but the schmoozing stuff is really what's going to make you guys more successful. And of course, in the beginning, I'm like, schmoozing, really? That's what your best advice is? Come on. But he didn't mean that the term schmoozing the way we think about it. He really meant that there's this whole set of other skills that make you successful in your career other than the skills you learn in college. Like, how do you deal with a difficult boss? How do you influence and persuade people? How do you structure your life to where you have a balance, to where you're not burning out? How do you give just a fantastic business presentation? Those are all things that you kind of learn along the way that school doesn't necessarily teach you, but they make all of the difference. And then I would observe it, coming out of school and into my job, I'd see people with similar education levels, similar talent levels, similar intellectual IQ levels. And then some people would do really well and get promoted, and the other people would stagnate or they would leave or whatever. And it was totally related to those skills. When you talk about why someone stagnated, it wasn't like, oh, this person was more analytical than the other person, or this person was able to run models better. It was always the other stuff that was hard to describe. And so, my take on it was, look, I need to write about this stuff so that, someone who's 5 years into their career can actually learn some things quicker than I learned them and, get a head start on their careers, So that was the idea. I just felt like it would be useful to some people. I figured if it'd be useful to a handful of people and really help them in their careers, then great. It's worth doing the work.
Yeah. So you came up with 8 career skills that you didn't learn at college, right? Which are the top 3 that you would underline?
All right, let me read them off. Hang on, let me get my book here. Sometimes I can't even remember what I write here. All right.
It's over 5 years, so I think it's understandable. And you've probably come up with more even with time. Or
I did. I did have a longer list, but I whittled them down to the ones I felt like were most important. Yeah. Okay. So skill number 1 is called focusing, which is basically discovering your point of difference, what you're good at, how to do that. Skill number 2 is managing your manager. So mastering the art of what I call the art of followership. Skill number 3 is business storytelling. So that's making data interesting and persuasive. Skill number 4 is presenting. So how to give a great presentation in those high stakes moments. Skill number 5 is persuading. And what I say is make those who don't work for you work for you.
Yeah, very important.
Skill number 6, managing others, how to become a talent magnet. How do you become that person that everyone wants to work for? Skill number 8, how to evolve. So that's about staying marketable and making sure that, in our economy, anytime you need to go find a new job, you have the right skills to be able to do that. And then skill number 9 is balancing. And that's about not hating your life while you're doing it all. So what I found, they're all important. I think the ones early in the career that people seem to gravitate most to are number 1, managing your manager. So I think, your relationship with your boss dictates over 50% of your career satisfaction. You can work for a mediocre company, but have a great boss and be perfectly happy. You can work for a great company and a mediocre boss and be totally miserable. And so that direct manager is very important. And a lot of times we blame, the training industry, they all blame management for this. Oh, we got to train our managers better. And certainly managers have something to bear on, share some blame on this, but that's not helpful for someone right out of school. It wouldn't be helpful for me to write, hey, hopefully you get a good manager. If not, these stupid companies just need to train managers better. That's not helpful. What's helpful is here's everything you can do in your power to make sure that your relationship with your boss is good. Now, some people are just going to have evil bosses, but that is a small percentage of people usually. And by the way, it's also a small percentage to get an amazing boss that's good person, great skills, all that stuff. Usually bosses are good people with a couple blind spots,
Yeah.
And so how do you manage that relationship to make sure that you build momentum with your manager is what that's all about. I think as they start to progress more in their careers, it becomes about managing others. So that manager, I'm really interested in that manager employee relationship. And so that's where I flip it and say, all right, you got to manage your manager. But then when you manage people, here's how to not to be that manager that no one wants to be, So those two things, a lot of people gravitate to. And I think the reason they gravitate to it is that it's just so relevant. It's just such a source of pain in the daily work life that people want to know how to, and because it's so subjective, people want to know and talk through, how can I be better in that area?
And what about like people like, I don't know, at your level, so say like, VP level, call it, or even people that are at the EVP level, out of those 9 that you mentioned, which ones do you think are more key at that level, or people are lacking more of at that level?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think becoming a talent magnet and managing other people is a gap for anyone. Some people get to where they are by having bad habits, and then that is reinforced by getting promoted. And by bad habits, I mean they are only focused on managing up and managing their manager and don't care as much about their people.
Yeah.
And they never really learned how to manage people very well. And so that's why you see people in these executive positions that people hate to work for. You see it all the time. And so I think that's probably the number one thing that's most important. I also think this kind of evolving piece, I do coaching. I mentioned I do coaching. So I do a class. It's called Landing Your Dream Job. And it's a 5-week class that I do once a week. And I try to keep the groups small, but I have 10 people in the class. And these are really talented, strong candidates. And some of them are 15, 20 years into their careers. And they're thinking, all right, what's the next step for me? And so being able to dust off those interview skills, being able to really position yourself in the marketplace, depending on the unique circumstance you find yourself in your life, becomes very, very important, I think, because there's a lot of people in their 40s, 50s that are looking to make a career transition. And they can absolutely do it. But they also are like, geez, it's like dating again or something like that, after you've been married and divorced for 20 years. It's like, oh, I got to do this again? Like I have to go out and network. And, it's like, you're like, what am I going to go to the clubs, go to the bars again? Like it's a different game when you're at that level. And so people are wanting to understand, how do I do that? How do I figure that out? So those are 2 that I think are critical.
Yeah. And in the book, do you speak about theory or do you give practical examples?
It's much more practical than theoretical. Yeah. I am not interested. It is not an academic book. It is a read this for some really practical, tangible things that you can apply. And by the way, it's not a research document either. It's an opinion column, right? So it's, this is what I've observed. I'm really, look, I'm not really that. I have some proof with, the Gallup organization did this study, blah, blah, blah. Look, I always found it was, when I was in business school, you had the professors who could tell you the latest research on marketing, right? Then you could have the professors that did marketing for 20 years that would say, here's how marketing works.
Yeah.
Much more valuable, right? So if I were buying a book on neuroscience, I'd want to understand the latest research. A book like this on careers, I want to hear from someone who's been doing it for 10 plus years. And that's me.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the idea behind it. Here's some practical things that you could apply immediately from someone who's been doing it for a little while.
Yeah. How has this book helped you in your career up to making it to a CMO level?
Yeah, therapy is what it is, really.
Yeah,
as I'm writing it, it's very therapeutic for me. When Stephen Covey wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he said that people would criticize him and say, "How are you not? There's no way you do this all the time. Like you're touting these habits, and you don't do them all the time." And he said, "Of course I don't do them all the time. I'm not perfect. I just keep trying. The habits are great. I just keep trying to do them." And I feel the same way about my book. I had a friend who used to work for me, and she said, "I can't watch your videos." said, why not? And she said, well, number one, I think you're either talking about me, or two, I get annoyed because you're telling people to do something that you don't do, you know, which was a fair critique. And so the answer to your question is I use it as a reference all the time. You know, I think it's valuable to go back and think about and try to master. You know, not Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, when he developed his 13 virtues, he said he tried to attack one at a time because doing all 13 was too hard. And so I think it's a very helpful reference book for me personally. And then writing it was therapeutic. It helped me get my thoughts out. And not only that, just from a career standpoint, all the coaching that I do, the classes that I do, you know, it gives me the content solidified and well thought through that I can share and use as trainings that I develop or speaking engagements that I have.
What type of people do you typically coach, actually?
Yeah. So the book, you know, it's funny. The book is targeted for anyone that's coming out of college, that's probably maybe 0 to 10 years in their career. That was in my mind. You know, a lot of times you have in your mind a target and then you see if you were right or not. I'm finding that the true audience and the people that I coach are more like 5 years out of college to 15 years out of 5 to 15 years. So a little bit older and more experienced than I originally thought. I think there's two reasons for that. One, they have more money, so they can actually pay me, right?
Fair enough.
You know, I think a college student recognizes the value of interviewing, but I usually get them by going and speaking at a college or speaking at something where someone else is footing the bill, right? So someone's going to pay me some money to speak, then the college students enjoy it and stuff, but they're not shelling out themselves the dollars. That's one. And the other reason I'm finding is that many college students don't get it yet.
Yeah.
And by that, I mean, they don't get how hard it is to really nail an interview. Many of them think that you graduate from college and then when you have a degree, people give you jobs. You know what I mean? And so once these individuals have been and that's how I was, once these individuals have been in the workplace 5 years, they think, okay, all right, I get it now. I need to really be strategic and thoughtful about my career or else this thing's going to guide me whatever way it wants to.
Yeah.
And so they see the value in it. And therefore they're like, oh, this, you know, man, $300 for a couple of mock interviews. Like if I get the right job, that'll pay itself back on day one. So they see the value in it. They have the money, whereas college students aren't quite there yet. A lot of college students like the book and they like the content. They follow me on LinkedIn. A lot of them have been watching, you know, the ones that come to me are ones that have been watching me for 2 years, you know, and they're comfortable with me. They understand what my style is. And they think, all right, I think I get benefit from working with Sam.
And what do you get out of like investing time in making a book, investing time in doing all the videos, writing back to people? What reward do you get out of it?
Yeah. You mean besides money?
But besides money, of course, that's self-implied.
Well, you know, it's funny. When I was originally doing this, you know, you always get ahead of yourself and you think, all right, if I'm going to monetize this, how I'm going to do this, you know, what's the strategy? And I came up with kind of 3 areas. One is if you become an influencer, you know, companies can sponsor you, you know, and to do things, you know, post for them and stuff like that. The other one is you go speak at corporations and you could do workshops and trainings at corporations. That's attractive because, you know, you just got to convince one person and then they'll pay you $5,000 to come in and, you know, do a training or something like that. The other one is going direct to consumers. And I have right now, at least for now, I've chosen that route because I think that is really where the true test of your work is right there. It's like, you know, maybe I could fool someone into speaking at a corporation, but like I can't fool many consumers, like they individual consumers to take out money from their wallets and pay me.
Yeah.
And that to me, I felt like if I could get that, then I could do the other stuff, no problem eventually. But that is the truth. You know, I was very inspired by Dale Carnegie. You know, Dale Carnegie, before he wrote his How to Win Friends and Influence People, he was going to the YMCA and saying, hey, I'm going to do a public speaking course and I'll give you, you know, 80% of the profits YMCA. And I just want to see how I do. And that's how he did it. Like that's gutsy right there. That's legit what he did.
Wow.
And by the time he wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People, he had been teaching this course for 20 years. So he had all that material. He went direct to, and then, you know, he could go speak at companies if he wanted to. He could go do all sorts of other stuff. But I apply it to branding actually. If you can get a bunch of consumers to love your brand, you can get a hotel to take your brand, or you could go B2B, business to business pretty quickly. So that's number one, is like, I felt like that was the right strategy. Number two is I felt like I could have a bigger impact on people and really actually change their lives by doing, this more of an in-depth kind of coaching experience. If I were to go to a company and give a speech, it'd be cool. Like people would be like, oh, cool, whatever. But like a lot of the people there are there because like company told them they got to be there.
Yeah.
And hey, that's fine, and you could go in and there's going to be people in there that really love it. And that, not to say that doesn't make a difference, but if I can work with someone over the course of 5 weeks and they can be in a situation where they're down on their luck and they're not feeling a lot of hope, and then they get by working with me, they can get their mojo back and they can actually get a job. That's life-changing.
Yeah.
That's very satisfying for me, that I can really help shape and mold and go back and forth. I love the back and forth with people, and they're calling and saying, hey, I got this offer. I'm not sure about the money. Can you help me negotiate? I love the back and forth. I love thinking through problems with them. And, these people, when you're doing that, you're alone, right? You're alone. And so having someone there as a coach I found to be very useful. So the second component of what I get is I get to literally change people's lives.
Yeah.
When I'm coaching them, that's the gold standard.
Yeah. Is that like your deeper purpose really, maybe, that actually pushed you to do all this? Absolutely. 100%. I mean, I think, the money will come, right? I need to make a living. I need to support my family. Fine. But I do that today. I make money today, and I like my day job. I like doing marketing, but this as a true purpose, I wouldn't do it if I didn't love the process, if I didn't love doing it, and I didn't feel like it was making a difference, Yeah. Where can people follow you, Sam?
Yeah. So LinkedIn's the easiest way to follow me and find me. My website, samscareertalk.com, has some free, you can sign up and you can get some free materials on how to manage your boss, jobs and stuff like that. And you'll see on that website, if you put your email in, you'll get notifications for future stuff. I have an e-course coming up on how to nail the job interview. I'm going to continue to do the 5-week live course. Probably, we'll see. It's a month-long course. Probably do it 6 times a year, every other month. I like to keep that tight and small. And so I'd say LinkedIn and my website are the best ways to reach out.
Okay, perfect. Well, I'll make sure the links are there on the bio. So when this comes out, you just need to scroll down or go to the Dwyer Partners website and they'll find them. This was Sam Owens. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Do subscribe and comment on LinkedIn when you see it posted, and share with your network in consumer goods and retail, people in leadership positions who this content may serve a purpose. And I'll see you in the next edition of Lead and Thrive. Have a great day.